Hello and welcome to the Fisheries Management Station, part of the 2020 Virtual Waupaca County Youth Conservation Day. My name is Jason Breeggemann and I'm a Fisheries Biologist with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and my primary responsibility is to manage all the fisheries in both Shawano and Waupaca County. And by all the fisheries, I mean all the fisheries. That's the fisheries in some of the smallest streams in the county that might be so narrow that you can jump across them and maybe less than a foot deep. But these streams have a lot of fishery value because some of them might contain the best spawning and nursery habitat for some of our trout fisheries. We also manage a bunch of fisheries in large rivers, including managing flathead catfish and channel catfish on the Wolf River. We manage some very small ponds with some communities in the area, some of them that are less than an acre in size, which means they're less than about half of a football field, but they're oftentimes found in urban settings, and so they get a lot of fishing pressure. We also manage some very large lakes. The biggest lake in my management area is Shawano Lake, which is over 6,000 acres, so a very large lake. So we have a very diverse group of fisheries in Shawano and Waupaca counties. We have cold water trout streams along the western edge of Shawano and Waupaca counties. And these are some of the best trout streams in all of the state of Wisconsin. We have both brook trout and brown trout fisheries that occur naturally, and we stock some rainbow trout. We have a diverse set of fisheries in our lakes as well. We have muskie fisheries, walleye fisheries, northern pike, bass, panfish fisheries, catfish fisheries. We've got a really cool set of fisheries, and as a fisheries biologist, I'm responsible for managing all of them. Fisheries managers, we have three tools that we primarily use to manage the fisheries that we manage. Those are regulations, stocking, and habitat restoration projects. So we'll go through all those in a little bit more detail now. So all of our sport fish throughout the state of Wisconsin are managed by regulations. Some, such as northern pike and walleyes, have specific seasons in which you can only fish for them, or during certain times of the year. We also have bag limits for most of our popular game fish and panfish species. For example, all of the inland waters in Waupaca County right now outside of the Winnebago system have a daily bag limit of 3 for walleyes. We also have a specific set of regulations that we use to manage our trout fisheries that we call the stoplight approach, where we have green, yellow, and red regulations. Either a green, yellow, or red regulation will apply to all the trout streams that we have throughout Wisconsin. And the primary intent for regulations is to manage for angler harvest. That's what we use to try, and when it's necessary, reduce mortality to protect the quality of the fishery so that anglers don't harvest too many fish. The second tool that we have in our toolbox is stocking. Each year, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources stocks millions of fish of all different varieties. For example, in the counties that I manage, we stock yearling trout that are about 8 to 10 inches every spring and select water bodies before the fishing opener to provide harvest opportunities, most of the time located near population centers where anglers can go out and typically have a good opportunity to catch some harvestable sized trout. We also stock various other species in my area for various reasons. For example, we stock muskies in Shawano Lake to provide a fishery in there. If we didn't stock muskies, there wouldn't be a fishery, so we use stocking to create a fishery in a place where it wouldn't exist. We do this a lot with walleyes as well. There's 4 lakes in my area that are part of the Wisconsin Walleye Initiative that we're stocking with large fingerling walleyes every other fall that are about 8 inches long that we use to try and create a walleye fishery in those particular water bodies. Also, if there's some sort of a major disturbance like a fish kill happens in a lake, we will use stocking to recover that fishery as quickly as possible so that we can provide good fishing opportunities for the people that want to catch fish in Wisconsin. The last tool that we use is habitat projects, and right now there's a big push in the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to add trees to lakes. We call these tree drops or fish sticks projects. Trees are vital habitat for fish, both as nursery habitat, and predators like bass and pike will hide in them to ambush. And so we're trying to add these trees back to the water since most have been removed to try to enhance the habitat that fish have in our given water bodies. Now that we've talked about the 3 different tools that we typically use to manage a fishery, we're going to talk about how we figure out if it's appropriate to apply one of those tools, whether it's a different regulation, stocking, or a habitat project to a given water body to better manage the fishery. And in order to do that, we need to do some sort of survey to collect data about the fish or the habitat that's present. And so much of the rest of the talk today is going to be talking about surveys, what information we collect, and how we collect that data. But first, let's talk about the information we collect. Before we implement a management action, we want to know as much about a given fishery as we can. So we'll do a survey to collect what species are present in a given water body. Currently, there's over 100 different species or 160, different species or types of fish that can be found throughout the state of Wisconsin. So we have a very diverse fish assemblage throughout our water body. So we want to collect data on what species are present. We also want to know how abundant they are. Are they numerous, meaning they can be found throughout a lot of different locations in the lake, or they're abundant in a given lake, or are they rare? We also want to know what sizes they are. We want to make sure that we're growing large panfish and sportfish species such as walleyes and bluegills, etc., because anglers like to catch big fish. They don't want to catch a whole bunch of small fish. So we want to make sure that our management actions are allowing them to grow to sizes that are desired by anglers to catch. We also are interested in growth rates because we want our fish to grow as fast as possible and reach as large of sizes as they can, because that's going to create a higher quality fishery. And we also want to collect some data about the habitat that's present and the water quality. Is habitat lacking in a specific water body? And by doing a habitat restoration project, could we improve the habitat and potentially improve the quality of the fishery as a whole? So when we're going out to do a survey, those are the types of information that we're looking for. All right, now that you know the types of data that we collect when we're doing a fish survey, we're going to spend much of the rest of our time talking about the different gears that we use to capture fish to collect that data. And first, we're going to talk about what we call fyke nets, which is this white net in front of us here. And we primarily use fyke nets in the springtime to sample lakes when we're targeting walleyes, northern pike, and muskies. Walleyes, northern pike, and muskies all congregate in very specific areas of the lake with very specific habitat to spawn in the spring. And so we put nets out in those areas in order to capture as many northern pike, walleyes, and muskies as we can in the springtime. And the way that this net works is, imagine that that end of the net down there is staked up against the shoreline, and then it's stretched out perpendicular to the shore into the lake in this direction. So that's the shoreline over there, and we're extending our net away from the shore in this direction. In this part up on the front of the net that looks like a fence is what we call a lead, and it acts to help funnel fish into the net. And so the lead is staked up against the shore in that direction and extends out, and it has these white floats on the top of the lead that help it, the top of the net or the top of the lead float and stay up near the surface. And then on the bottom of the lead, it's difficult to see, but we have lead weights that hold the bottom against the bottom of the lake. And so that any fish that are swimming along the shoreline encounter this lead and they can't swim through it, so they try to swim down it, and they swim right into the large opening in the front of the net that we have here. And then inside the net we have various funnels that help funnel the fish towards the back of the net. We've got a set of funnels right up here in the front, and we've got another funnel here that helps funnel fish to the back of the net and prevents them from getting out. And then each day we go and we open up the back of the net and we can scoop all of the fish out with the net. And now we're going to show a short video clip of a DNR crew from a couple of years ago actually going and checking a fyke net in the water and picking up the back of the net and scooping a whole bunch of northern pike out of it. a similar net to what we use to catch our walleyes, muskies, and northern pike to also catch catfish, and it's called a hoop net. So this is a hoop net right here in front of me. And the hoop net works very similar to the back of the pike net, in which we have an opening in the front that fish can swim in, and then we have two funnels going through the inside of the net that help funnel fish to the back of the net and keep fish from escaping. When we're trying to catch catfish on the river, we don't use a lead on the front of the net because there's so much wood and debris floating down in rivers that it would catch on that lead and tear the net apart potentially, and we don't want that to happen. So we don't put a lead out on the front of the net. But in order to help us catch more catfish, sometimes we'll bait the nets with a bait like a pressed soy meal or something like that to try to attract catfish that have a strong sense of smell into the net. And so next we're going to show you a short video clip that was also taken a couple of years ago of a crew from the DNR removing some big flathead catfish out of the hoop net that's sitting up on the front of the boat. And so when we remove fish from a hoop net, we actually set the whole net up on the front of the boat and pull them out from the front of the net. And so you'll see them removing some big flatheads out of the net.
Okay, we're on the Wolf River. It's June 21st. We're conducting a hoop net survey just downstream of Gill's Landing, and we just pulled this net in.
As I mentioned earlier, we use nets to try and capture species like northern pike, walleyes, and muskies that gather in very specific areas in large schools in the springtime to spawn. However, not all species gather in large schools in very specific areas to spawn in the spring. Species that don't do that are like largemouth bass and panfish such as bluegills. So we need a more active capture technique to drive along the shoreline to figure out and capture those fish while they're spawning. And so to do that, we use an electrofishing boat. And this is one of our electrofishing boats here. So the way that this works is this big red box back here is a generator. And that generator produces enough electricity that drives through wires along the bottom of the boat and comes out this boom and gets put in the water out in front of the boat on these droppers. And then there's two people typically standing up on the front of the boat holding these long-handled dip nets. And as the electricity stuns the fish and prevents them from swimming away, those two people up on the front of the boat scoop them up and put them in the big silver tank that's in the middle of the boat that's a live well. We fill that with water, and that's where the fish are stored until we're done with our electrofishing station, and then we can work them up. Now it's important to note that the electricity doesn't harm the fish in any way. We just put enough electricity in the water to stun them to prevent them from swimming away so that we can scoop them up with the nets and put them in the live well to collect scientific data on them. Our goal is to manage the fishery so that we can provide the best fishing opportunities, not to hurt the fish in any way, shape, or form. Also notice that up on the front of the boat are several spotlights. We typically do our electrofishing at night. Nighttime is when a lot of species like bass and panfish move into shallow water where this gear is more effective because there's a less likelihood of them getting eaten by predators when they move into shallows at night. So we're oftentimes out doing our electrofishing surveys at night. So this is a great gear to capture fish that don't congregate in large schools like largemouth bass and bluegills. As I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, we even manage fisheries in streams that are so small that you can just about jump across them and might not be more than a foot deep. But we certainly aren't going to be able to set a net in one of those streams or drive the big electrofishing boat in one of those streams. But we still need a way to be able to sample the fish in those streams. And so to do that, we use what we call a backpack shocker. And I'm wearing the backpack shocker and holding all the components right now. And so the way that it works is a person puts on a set of waders and walks down the stream, carrying this big backpack console. And within the backpack console is a battery that produces the electricity, as well as all the knobs and things that we can adjust to control the amount of electricity that we're putting in the water. And so I'm going to turn around so that you can see the back where the backpack unit is, and the battery is the black box on the bottom, and then there's a bunch of knobs that we can adjust so we can control the electricity. So in the way that this works is that an individual puts on the backpack unit and walks down the stream, and the probe that I have in my left hand is what puts the electricity down in the stream to stun the fish in the same way that the electrofishing boat stuns the stream. And then in their other hand, they use a net to scoop up those fish. So as they're walking along the stream, the electricity is stunning the fish and they're scooping them up. And then typically there's another person that walks behind them carrying a bucket that acts as a live well, so they just turn around and pass the fish off to the person that's walking behind them to put them in the bucket to act as a live well until we're done with our station, and then we can measure them up and collect any other scientific data that we need from them. And again, this electricity is not meant to harm the fish in any way. It's just meant to stun them enough so that we can scoop them up and be able to survey the fish population to collect the data we need to implement management actions as necessary. So we use a little bit larger version of this on slightly larger streams that more than one individual can walk down, and we call that a barge shocker. And rather than have the person carry a battery pack and all the controls on their back, they actually pull a floating sled behind them that has a generator in it to produce electricity and some more controls to generate 3 points of electricity. And so 3 individuals can walk down a larger stream and putting electricity in the water at 3 different locations, and all of them are carrying nets to scoop up fish as well. And so what we're going to show you now is a video taken a couple of years ago by a different DNR crew where they're actually walking down the stream, pulling a stream barge behind them and shocking along the stream for trout. And you'll see them catch a whole bunch of different brown trout in that segment. And also they'll come up to one part where it looks like there's a board in the water, or a series of boards in the water. That's actually a habitat project that our habitat crew is working on. They're actually building what's called an overhead bank structure, where essentially they put some boards on top of some pillars to build what's an undercut bank to provide some overhead cover for the brown trout to hang out under, and eventually that will get filled in with dirt and grass put on top of it to make it look like it's a natural shoreline, but it provides great overhead cover and great habitat for brown trout in our streams.